Okay, this is episode 12 of OverSight, a show about Overwatch. Kind of a shit subtitle, that. I'll make it better. I'll improve that. All right, and the only show about Oversight. And I won't hear anything else from anyone else in this panel who might think they do shows, because here's the thing. Anyone, it's like in the game, okay? You know when people say like, oh, he's incredibly large hero pool, but then you look and they're not actually that good on any of the heroes. It's like, well, anyone can just pick heroes, can't they? Just as anyone can just turn on Skype and press record. But to have a show, showmanship, you know, the entertainment business, there's a little bit of, you got to have a little bit of style, you know, a little bit of panache. You got to have some polish as well, though. That's the thing, you know. You got to have, I mean, Monty would, I would say relay, bore us with stories about how he did theatre and reference plays he was in and, you know, cite that as to why he's the superior showman, you know. But all that matters is we're better than you. And so as long as we're better than you, you must seek to become better than us. Until then, this is the only show that matters. So,
you know, I just asked myself a very simple question. If a show is recorded and nobody watches it, was it even recorded at all?
Is it really a show then?
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. So I'm the usual host, Thorin, as expected. I know everyone in Oversight's thinking, I haven't seen you in a while. Like, not just the show, but, you know, you haven't really done anything in Overwatch. And you probably, you know, some people are thinking that's a good thing, because if you know what my solo videos are like, it's not really about celebration of the game at the moment, is it? You know, it's usually like, this is why the game will fail. This is why the leagues will fail. This is why teams will fail. But good news, I've got another video coming up soon. And yes, people are in trouble again. And yes, I will feast and exploit you for your problems. Yes.
Is it about the team naming stuff?
No, it's without giving away too much details, it's just about some of the, how would you describe it? Some of the methods that teams are using in the process of trying to acquire players and some of the shenanigans.
So, that sounds very enlightening.
Yeah, could listen, it's actually one of those things where this is one where in theory no one will get right. Like, no one will actually be named by name. So it's just like more you out the people who are sort of doing it in the hopes that community pressure means others don't do it in the future. So anyway, that's enough of a tease for now. Usual co-host, Monte Cristo, who, I mean, you know, I'm heavy back into League of Legends now, Monty. You love that game. Love that game still. And back in League of Legends, I am told on a daily basis that you will fail, as Overwatch and Overwatch League will. The money will run out one day, and it's hard to tell which of the two. Either you will come crawling back to League, or I can't tell. It's either that. So that's like the people who I think secretly want you to come back, or you'll just fail outright and you'll just be done in esports completely. So it's one of the two, you know. They're giving you some good options here.
Yeah, it's not like I don't have any other skills or anything that I could do work with. Hilarious. I'm enjoying my current situation.
Listen, Monty, I believe you should keep your eye out for your friends, you know, and even if they've chosen to go a certain path, you know, what you do is a true friend just sort of scouts out, you know, potential things that could, you know, to pick them up if it goes wrong. So if it goes wrong, Monty, I've figured out where you go, right? So you need a game in which Koreans are really good. You need a game which is like a team game. No.
PUBG,
Well,
of course.
Listen, you could be the guy you could be the cherry on the top of the Heroes of the Storm cake. Listen, Monty, it's Blizzard. We all love Blizzard. They make fantastic games, especially their MOBA related games. So I feel like that's the obvious fit for you if Overwatch League doesn't work out. Now, I don't know why it wouldn't work out, you know. Let's just see how it goes. Let's roll the dice, as probably everyone not from a sports team said when going into this venture. So let's go around the overlay. So in the bottom right corner, we have got Kirby, who was the former coach of a team called the Chavs, which, fantastic name. Not really that marketable a name, but then again, team wasn't really in a position where they were shooting for those big sponsors. I don't think they were going to get an Overwatch League spot with that name, and that was going to be representing the UK.
The London Chavs, actually.
Chav 9 is the name.
Yeah, that's not a bad one.
Front runner, you know. I feel it really encapsulates British culture.
Well, certainly the lower classes. You know, that's the secret. See, what people haven't realised, Monty, is people think to themselves, like, you know, whenever Americans think, oh, British people are so polite, it's like, in movies and books, yeah, and in theory, some people will be polite, but I don't think the working class were ever polite. Like, it's just that they didn't exist in history. Like, they weren't writing fucking plays and obviously they weren't TV shows, so you just didn't know they existed. You only saw all those twats that are in like Jane Austen novels and Downton Abbey, which I know for Americans that they think that's Britain still. Like, I'm not sure some of them even know that was like at the beginning of the 20th century. Like, they actually think it's going to be like that when they come over. They don't realize. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, and I've lived there for a while. So instead, speaking of chavs, we've got Sideshow here, who represents the UK and again the working class, and he also comes from an area in the UK that doesn't exist, which is the North. So we both come from that area, which may as well be Narnia because no one else knows it. It has no relevance to history. The only thing that was actually done, this is what's genius, Monty, the only really major innovation that came from the Northeast, where me and Sideshow come from, is that's actually where the first steam engine actually came from. But here's the genius. Think about that. So the major innovation was a guy figured out the fastest possible way to get himself and as many goods as he could away from that area and down south to where everyone exists and where all the money is. So even that was the innovation. That's like, and the other thing they did was build ships. Again, it's an escape plan. You notice these are all just methods of transport to get away from this area. Oh yeah, also Kirby, current coach, we'll see how that lasts. I mean, the episode, some people might be watching this in a week. Current coach of 1, 2, 3. Here's the question, though. Is it as easy as the Jackson 5 song suggested it was to coach such a team? Is it a joy? Are they just easy to coach?
Not really. Mostly because it seems unlikely that the team's going to be picked up by, as a team, the whole rosters. So it's looking more and more like some players have opportunities and are going to just get poached. So even that is affected by practice right now.
How can you poach someone from unsigned teams?
Well, sure, but it's similar to what happened with the Cyclone.
Let's be careful with that word.
You have to understand, poaching was just a concept in other games and other sports, right? But because Monty comes, first of all, from North America and especially from League of Legends, poaching, first of all, it's a trigger word for him. Be careful when you say that around him. Secondly, that's like almost a legal term in League of Legends where obviously you'll never actually go to court because Riot are quite clever in how they do their contracts. But if poaching goes on, that basically wrecks you. And there's nothing fun about it, sadly. So let's talk about that topic, though, because it does seem as though, with the exception currently of a couple of big-name Korean squads, it does seem as though there aren't going to be that many whole squads who go into the Overwatch League. Like, all the rumblings we've heard is that it'll be like maybe half of a team goes, or maybe it's just individual players get picked up. What have people heard about that sort of thing?
Well, I've heard that a lot of people from different teams are trialing for Overwatch League teams simply because of how attractive that is. Like, if you have an Overwatch League spot, that's all you have to say to convince people to try out for your team. So it doesn't matter what roster you're part of, especially with all the free agents that you have now. You have a bunch of people just trialing left and right for pretty much every single Overwatch League team.
It's about half and half at the moment, by the look of it, in terms of overall teams, full teams being picked up for Overwatch League. At the moment, I think there's 4. There's the Lunatic High team got picked up for Seoul. Luxury Watch Blue got picked up for New York. Immortals are going to run with a roughly similar
roster. So let's do this. That is not announced for New York. So that is your supposition.
Isn't it? Oh, right. That's a report from ESPN. Was that?
But Seoul has been announced, right? So anyway, continue.
Listen, from Sideshow's mouth to my ears. So as far as I'm concerned, that's happening, right? So keep going, Sideshow. What else is confirmed by you?
And then what was the other one? What's the other one that I'm missing? It's
Immortals, you said.
By the way, just so we can get this out of the way now, Sideshow is an analyst now for Contenders, so he actually has a job. Like, he's not just, again, pretending to do shows, like cosplaying and LARPing with his friends, pretending they're in one of these shows, because they like it so much. No, he actually has a job now. So anyway, continue, Sideshow.
And there's also Misfits. The other reported team. Oh, Misfits, of course, right, yeah. Who will presumably run with a somewhat similar roster because they're doing well.
With those pre-established rosters, there's no guarantee that they aren't going to make changes to that roster.
Sure.
Sure, no Winston said, "Oh yeah, we're committed to these players and we're going to keep them," but there's no guarantee they're not going to contract players.
I think it's more likely, especially it depends team by team and knowing the owners and that kind of stuff. With Immortals, I think they will. I don't see a reason to get rid of anybody on their current roster, especially because guys like Agilities and Grid Reality and Verbo are so young. They're like 17, so I think they show a lot of talent. So you just sort of keep them even if they're not playing on the primary roster. I do think that most teams are likely to run 12-man rosters so that you have an additional entire team of players to scrim against, so you can do in-house scrims. And the league minimum is pretty low. Like the league minimum for player payment that they've already released is $50,000 a year, which is not a lot when you're already have spent so much money on acquiring these slots. So I think that most teams will probably run a lot of depth in their rosters. So even if the starting roster might change, I think that the teams that you're talking about will probably just add depth and not actually cut players.
Is there actually a logic to like which positions people ideally should want to have subs for no matter what, in case of meta changes? Can you think of some obvious ones?
Well, mostly specialists, right? If you have a base of players that are pretty flexible, that can play a variety of roles, then you reinforce that with a few specialists at some key positions. So maybe DPS if you have like a really sick Genji or something like that. But even then, it's not a given. Some teams have been talking about, getting like a Reinhardt specialist and a Winston specialist or something like that for tank. But that would make your team so predictable when you do show up in the server. Like, it pretty much is a perfect sell.
Still better than just not having that guy and then the other guy having to play the hero who doesn't play, right?
But ideally, you probably at that role want someone who can reliably play both.
Yeah, Koreans.
It's pretty much only DPS and Flex. Like, the Flex is the big one as well. Because you've got the Diva, Zarya, Soldier 76, Doomfist, whatever. It's like that tends to be the role that's got the most depth to it, along with the DPS players.
You say that because we come off of a few months where like support position, it's always been the same supports. Like you have a Lucia guy, and then you have a guy that plays Zen and Ana, and that's about it. But like with potential changes that come in the future where you might run more supports or less supports or different supports, then maybe that's also a position where you want to have more people.
Because that obviously is actually an element which, again, it's such a tertiary element, people won't think of it as a big deal. But if you're putting millions and millions into a team and then you're signing all these players for huge salaries, I realize you can't really do this, but you would sort of like at least a heads up of like, what sort of positions should I have for the next year? Oh shit, I've signed loads of players that I don't need to swap in now. I also wonder, do you think, right, it's implied at the moment that like all the top pros want to be in Overwatch League. Do you think that there are actually players, though, who will just accept being potentially a bench player if they're a good player, as opposed to just go and be a Contenders player or something and be the star of that team? Like, what's the sense from the community, do you think?
I think everybody wants to be on an AL roster, no matter if they're sat on the bench or whatever at the moment, because the Overwatch League presents so many more opportunities. And at the moment, it isn't completely clear what's going to happen if you don't get into the Overwatch League. So everybody's gunning for that. I think you'll see, or I expect that you'd see a lot of big names that are just going to be kind of sat on the bench or fighting for a starting position in a lot of these teams, and they'll just be happy that they got into the Overwatch League.
I think that I agree, but I think it's because there haven't been announcements about what Contenders is actually going to look like next year. This season of Contenders is quite clear. We have some OWL teams, some endemic teams that are forming these rosters, but Blizzard hasn't announced yet what Contenders is going to be. And if Contenders is going to be, say, there's a lot of things it could be, right? It could be B teams of additional Overwatch League rosters that exist. Like they could each field a minor league team effectively within Contenders. Yeah. That may be an opportunity. Are they going to support endemic teams? What I think they should do personally is teams. If I were Blizzard, the way that I would run Contenders is that I would allow endemic teams to continue to run contenders rosters. So, for example, if you're an org like Envision, and maybe you don't have enough money or funding to become an Overwatch League team immediately, but you've actually proven successful at scouting some talent, then what I would do if I was Blizzard is let them continue to run a contenders roster, right? And I would set player buyouts. So if I didn't have enough money for Overwatch League, but I did have enough money to run a contenders team, I could try, and they should set up an effective business model so that contenders owners continue to scout talent. And then the profit for these teams comes from selling those players at a minimum value to Overwatch League teams. Sure. So in the future, maybe you get a lot of money because there's a bidding war over a particular player, because remember, there can't be a draft right now. So it would have to just be buying out of contracts. But if they set a healthy minimum for player buyouts, it would incentivize teams who think they are good at scouting talent. And the other thing this would do is, obviously Overwatch League in future years is going to expand further and further into more teams, is that it gives Blizzard a sense of relationship with these teams, so they know who to partner off. So let's say another sports team comes in and they say, hey, this team's been really good about finding talent. They've got a good roster right now that maybe is close to Overwatch League caliber. So why don't you partner with them? They go to merge into like a single team and then buy into Overwatch League because they present the expertise in the game, whereas the other people provide the money. So I see it not only as a way to keep the endemic teams involved and to keep them profitable with those teams by selling the player contracts that they scout, but also as a way to develop future partners for Overwatch League. So that's what I would do. But considering that there haven't been any announcements, I don't think all the players are not saying, ooh, I'd rather play on a contenders team, right? Because there's just no information for them to make that decision. So everybody just wants to play in Overwatch League. But I do think that will, if there's an announcement that makes it attractive, then that might change. Some players may not want to be on the bench.
Well, even like you mentioned contenders, but even for like the format for Overwatch League, we don't really know what that's going to mean in terms of like being a sub. Like, are there rules where you can't sub in player mid-series or something like that? So maybe you would have more exposure as a player playing in contenders and having an opportunity at a starting job if you do well at that level. We just don't know what it means to be a sub right now in Overwatch League.
Yes, and it is, in terms of format, it is difficult to you can't announce a format until you know the number of teams that are going to be competing, and teams continue to be in negotiations with Blizzard. So that's all like I'm a part of the format discussions. Yeah. So they're fine. It's just like, until the number of teams is unknown quantity, then it can't really be decided upon.
Depending on the format of Overwatch League and like whether it's always on certain days or it's every week or whatever, if there was a time in the schedule, I think it would be cool if what they did is the Contenders was like a weekend tournament or something that was like 2 to 3 days, and you had that on the days when Overwatch League isn't, and then the implication would be then even Overwatch teams and players might watch that league as well, and it'll be the other thing you watch as well as Overwatch League. So that way, you're not in the Overwatch League, but you still get like your sort of spotlight, and you, in theory, if you come through as a new player or someone who people thought wasn't good before, but you show you're really good, that's how you could then have the platform to potentially move up to another team, or just to one day, as you're saying, maybe one day a team can become the next Overwatch League team by vetting themselves in these competitions. Because I have to say, coming from other games, I think particularly for me, this is a problem in games like League of Legends, where they try to make the sub-league just like, they have very weird formats for how they do them in all the countries, and I notice it's very rare that the top tier ever watch those sub-leagues. So as a result, you can't really shine in that sense, So for me, the reason why I'd like it to be like a weekend tournament is because then you can really tell if someone's actually good. Like if it's just a sub-league and it does loads and loads of weeks, someone doing well 1 week, it doesn't really impress you that much. It doesn't say that much, But if you went through a little tournament and you win that tournament and you play all these different teams in a row, it kind of does say a lot about you, and that kind of vets that you're kind of a bit battle tested, I think.
So you're talking about something more like the old sort of Alienware monthly melees, where it was just a weekend bracket. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting idea. I mean, it's not bad. At least I think I like that idea, because at least the finals would be pretty hype every weekend, right? Because even though it's not Overwatch League, it's still like teams that have battled through over a several day period. It's a good idea.
And it's a tournament, and that way the other aspect to me that would make that work is then you're also not having all these people who are only contenders teams. They're not in Overwatch League at all. You're not making them have to basically run like a mini Overwatch League team. Like, right, I've got 10 weeks in a row I've got to run. I've got to have the roster every single week that's going to be locked in. You know, like that's a lot of logistical issues if you're the guy who only has a contenders team. If you did these tournaments that are like weekly or, as you say, like every 2 weeks or something, at least you could chop and change as well. Like if you're the contenders team, right, that didn't work out for these 2 tournaments with this guy, we bring in a new one, let's test him in the next one. I think it's actually a better format to test new talent. That's what I was alluding to with like League of Legends. Part of the problem with League of Legends is in all the formats, you basically play a whole 2 to 3 months with a guy, and at the end decide whether he sucks when the really important match comes that he either wins or loses. Like, that's not that great a format. Like, yeah, you get a sense of working with him and developing him, but the amount of teams that in playoffs of even LCS, etc., just find out, oh, it turns out that guy doesn't perform in playoff matches, but we only know that 2.5 months later. That's not as ideal for developing the new talent, in my opinion. Yeah, once someone's tested, just haven't played a league, we know that some top player's going to make it, but to me, that's like the final frontier for all newer players, is you've got to have them in a real tournament. It can't just be a match that doesn't matter as much because it's a league. Obviously, pure speculation there. Might indeed not be like that.
I'm not really sure how that would work with what they're trying to do with the open division, though, because they're trying to have like a gradual step where you go from like the amateurs that qualify through solo queue basically, and then go to contenders, and then you have the Overwatch League on top of that. So if you have a contenders,
that sounds impossible though. How would that work in terms of you just play on servers and then somehow get into a match? Because again, you're not playing with a team, are you?
So no, you are playing. You are playing with a team in Open Division. So any players in Masters or above can compete in the Open Division seasons. So you form a team and then compete with that team.
So sort of like a mixed team.
And again, it hasn't been announced how that interacts with contenders. But what were you going to say, Kirby, about this?
Well, it hasn't been announced, but thus far it's been similar to what we're describing with like leagues, where it's like a 8-week or 7-week or 6-week thing going on, and then the winner is whoever won the most maps out of like most matches out of all that. So if they do it at that level, it seems unlikely that they're going to do some kind of short tournament for contenders.
That already sounds very worrying, though. Like, how could you?
Okay, so it's not like that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because there is a lot of wiggle room in that. If contenders were to be run like a tournament, you could just do like contenders points based on your sort of placement in the tournaments over a number of weeks, and then the bottom teams compete against the top open division teams after a certain number of weeks. There are definitely ways you could do this.
You could have multiple small tournaments, and then based on those points, do some kind of like promotion relegation. It's doable. I'm just not sure that they would go in that direction.
Because I have a question on that. If you do it as like a league format, but this is for the open division, if these players are really coming out of solo queue and they're like, right, well, I've got like 3 or 4 people, like, oh, I've got a couple more, right, we've got a team now, we can play. Maybe I'm just naive, but I don't see Western teams staying together very long if they're the teams that are losing in the first weeks, you know? I could see like massive problems with the rosters there. And are people, even if you roster lock them, aren't teams just going to like give up halfway when they
So they've already thought about this. So the thing about Open Division is that you get money in your BattleNet account if you compete in all of the matches. So it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. You get more if you win and do well. But they already have like the carrot there just to compete. So if you complete all your matches, that's when you get free money in your BattleNet account.
Okay. Because that would be the obvious concern for me, like not just knowing what some people are like, you know.
Sure, and I think that is a concern, but I think that they've been smart about how they've set that up. So,
from behind the scenes, are the sort of trials going on for all these teams? Are they just like mad free-for-alls? Like there's people from all different teams and people who've never played together whatsoever? In general, are they trying to get cores of people or people who have some sort of past relationship? What has everyone heard?
From what I've
seems,
go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like teams have different approaches. It seems like, from the Cloud9 kind of situation, they've been trialing a couple of those players a while back and then brought them in, but made big shifts all in one week. And then from what people have reported on the NRG situation, They started just trialing tons and tons of people, similar to like the TSM kind of situation.
Well, they've literally got the TSM manager, right? It's now at NRG, so he's keeping it. He's got a formula, he's got a blueprint, and he's working with it. Okay.
But this time he's stuck to a core as it got later on, and they seem to have nailed down, three, potentially 4 players that they've been repetitively scrimming with over the past month or something like that, and interchanging a couple of people. It seems variable throughout teams, but in general, it's just like throw things at the wall of the beginning period and see what sticks.
No, that part makes sense. There's an evolution of thought there. He's got a core now. See, the problem was before, he had all the players. He was getting mad tryouts. He just never actually had, I think it was like more than 3 players on the actual team. That was the flaw. He nailed the idea of getting people to come and interview. He just never hired anyone for the business, Okay. What were you going to say, Kirby? You were going to say something there.
From what I've heard, and this is only a few teams, so it might not apply to like every single team, but we're talking about 30, 40 people potentially trialing to be on those rosters. And obviously...
Each roster?
Yeah, for single roster. So they're all trying to impress. They're all trying to show what they can do. And it kind of creates this environment where everyone's a bit over-eager and trying to show what they can do, make plays, all that. And it's not conducive to proper team play. So I think with those kind of process, they're going to have a tough time really nailing and finding out who actually has synergy versus just picking up 6 individuals who are good at the game.
And do they actually have the lineups that are trialing? Are they scrimming each other? Is that the logic? Or do they do it in secret? Or how does it work? Because that's why I wonder how it hasn't gone out there to some degree.
I know some teams have been doing that. I don't know if that applies to some of the other teams.
Okay. I don't think most of the teams are doing that though, because definitely most of the top teams have already been scrimming against NRG and been scrimming against Cloud9 and stuff as well while they've been making roster shuffles, things like this. One of the biggest reasons it hasn't leaked is because they have so many different rosters that it kind of becomes useless to say, oh, these guys are trialing, because everybody's trialing.
But
so everyone's also trying for each other, basically. People are trying for 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah, I think so.
Some people, yes, who are really sought after. But basically it's no guarantee. It's basically a process. Maybe at the start they would do in-house to get a sense for some of the players, and then they would play scrims versus other teams, and that's maybe the roster that kind of gets leaked. But doesn't also mean that was the most likely roster.
There's also the age issues, because you have to be 18 to compete in Overwatch League, which I disagree with. I mean, I think it should be 17 personally, but you do have to be 18, and that means that guys like Sinatra, who are only going to become available halfway through the first season, do you sign him? Do you put him on the bench and try and get him into a starting position? Because he's definitely good enough to be a starting level OWL player, but it's just a lot of teams, I think, are making decisions around that as well. Like Flower, definitely a player that needs to be signed, but he literally can't be used for the entire first season. So,
see, here's the thing. Since you guys have all just gone with the fact that you're calling it OWL now, the sad thing is that actually makes me realize how fucking amazing you could make a MOBA where all you do is you just play owls and they've all just got different magical abilities, and the key thing is there's an FPS component and you can turn your head 360. Fucking baller, isn't it? Sounds like the shit if you ask me.
All right, well, you could work on that game. I know Too Good is crowdfunding his game. You can work on your...
Monty, all I'm saying is there's another potential, right? If this OWL League doesn't work out, I'll get you into the OWL League that I do in my own game, OWL MOBA, League of Owls.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So,
I almost lost my train of thought due to that analogy.
Okay.
But, I was wondering, how does that work in terms of U.S. labor laws if you compare it to what happens in the NHL or that type of stuff?
I don't fucking know, dude. I don't know. I don't know how it works in U.S. labor law. I do know that League of Legends found a way around it, or maybe they're doing it illegally. Who knows? It's Riot. But you never know whether that's true or not. But they said that 17 is an acceptable age to be a professional player, and they do occasionally have 17-year-old players who are living in team houses and stuff like that. But honestly, the answer for 18 is probably something. It probably just makes it easier because they're no longer minors. Would be my guess. But it does make things really shitty because we've got I mean, we've got a player like Flower, who's one of the best players in the world, who can't compete in the first season. And what about guys like Who Are You? I mean, Who Are You is maybe 16 now.
He's super young.
He was 15 when he started playing, so he might be 16. I could look it up, but okay. It is pretty shitty that like Who Are You is not going to be able to play in Overwatch League for a couple of years. I'll just look it up.
But why don't those rules apply to contenders either? Because you could, if you have a minor system, you could sign the guy.
He literally just turned 16 like on August 23rd.
Like, presumably they would claim something along the lines of that. If you're in Contenders, they'll probably just say that you're like a contractor or something, or like you're just doing it part-time, and maybe they can get away with that way. Whereas if you're in the league and you're attending a place like week on week, that's going to look like a job. I would guess that's how it is, you know? I'd love to know how that conversation goes at Riot Games. They're like, sir, is this okay with the law? And like Mark Merrill's like, I am the law! Like,
I mean, reminder that Riot did let people compete in LCS without any kind of P1 visas before the P1 visas were available. I know with CLG, we competed for an entire split with Seraph without a P1 visa.
Just here on vacation. It's fine.
Yeah. So,
well, no, the funny thing is,
they don't do that anymore, thankfully. But let's just say their history of legal compliance is not wonderful.
This is where, though, it's a shame that obviously, like, it's very unlikely Chinese players will be on these Western Overwatch League slots, because from League of Legends, I can tell you, this is where China are just geniuses, right? Because in China, they had a lot of players who were like 15, 16. So what China did was, they just heard the rule was like, right, here's what happened, okay? In the West, they made a rule. You have to be like 17 to compete. So for example, people like, we had a really young star called Reckless, who was in Europe. He couldn't compete. He had to sit on the bench. He had to wait for his chance. There were some other players, not old enough yet, got to wait. So all we did in the West when we heard the rule was like complain, like, oh, you should change the rule, like this is unfair, but abide by it. In China, they just said, wait a minute. So what you're saying is I just have to have a piece of paper that says I was born on this day. So they just went away and said, here's the piece of paper. It's all Chinese. Look, it's all in Chinese. There you go. And then you had all these players in their league who, I'm not joking, like when you look at some of these guys, some of them are definitely 14, but like, listen, they have a birth certificate. It says they're 17 years old. Can't do more than that, can you? You can't start like vetting the guy's whole life for like PIs and stuff.
Well, I'd also like, of course, there have been rumors that China's done that in the Olympics as well, which is allowed gymnasts and stuff to compete below the competition age limit. So, just comes with the territory.
Well, that's like the old joke. Do you remember back in the Cold War where they said that some of the like weightlifters who were women like looked suspiciously like they were just like effeminate men, like, and they were just like, no, I'm a woman. What do you mean? They were just like literally just like deadlifting in massive amounts. Like I like these countries that just don't fuck around. Basically, they're just like, listen, what's the rules? Oh, I'll stay within the rules. Like they just change their own definitions to fit them. So. Right, here's a question for you. So you were talking about all these players who were trialing. So again, we don't officially know a lot of these players. There's some very little. But one we do know was that Ajax, depending on which country you're from, was going to be, was it the NRG? No, it was the Boston squad, right, that he was trying out for. He didn't make it. And so here's the thing with Ajax, right? You might remember him, guys. He was on TSM for about 2 days. The reason he wasn't on TSM anymore.
Well, they lost a bunch of games.
Yes, he was on NRG as well. So obviously had a real connection with Derek Trong. He was on all these teams, right? But he obviously, he had some PR problems, and so he thought to himself, right, keep my head down. Since I didn't make it on this tryout, just probably publicise that to the world. And also, don't just say I didn't make it, but just speculate that they just don't like me as a person. Which also is genius, because it's sort of like saying, maybe your team won't like me either. It's quite mad, isn't it? I'd keep that on the low that they didn't get you for that,
I mean, like, first off, obviously, it was a huge victim move. And I think maybe you could say that he had a bad reputation, that he may believe that he doesn't deserve this bad reputation. But there's so many assumptions within that piece. First off, that he is, in fact, an Overwatch League caliber player. Jury's still out on that one, buddy. Secondly, that everybody is actually in some sort of dislike conspiracy against him, when most, general managers really just want to have the best team possible, and they can overlook a lot if you're a good enough player, right? There is leeway there if you're a star level player as to your behavior, as there is on any sort of competitive sports or esports roster. right? But the third thing is why, even if you believed all of these things, why would you release the personal Discord or chat messages you were receiving from these organizations? Like, it's enough for you to come out and say, hey, I would like another chance. I feel like I'm people are not really respecting me. I didn't get he can say, I didn't get a tryout with the Boston team because they didn't feel comfortable with, the other players said they didn't feel comfortable with me having me on the roster. All fine things to say, right? I wouldn't say them, but go do your shit if you want to. But don't, for the love of God, release private chat logs. Like, don't do that. And because first off, the chat logs he got back were very civil and professional from Huck. I didn't really see any issue with them. And second off, if you have that reputation where you're just randomly releasing that shit, guess who doesn't want to give you tryouts anymore or deal with you? All of a sudden, now everybody has to fucking call this Ajax guy on the phone because there's a risk of him releasing all these messages. You know what I mean?
And use a voice changer.
Yeah,
and use code words. I'd like you to come to the bakery, sir. Fucking hell. How far are we going to go, mate?
Ajax, message to Ajax. You are not good enough to be this much of a pain in the ass. You're not. You're not good enough. So
it's a shame that isn't what one of the messages said when you had a look. I would have I would have respected Huck more if it was just like, fuck out of here, you're not good enough. And also, we're spending 20 mil on this shit, right? We can't fuck around with busters like you. Get out. And don't ever come back. P.S. I fucked you, bitch. Like, and then he just releases these like, oh my god, what this is outrageous.
Yeah, that would be a real reason to release that message, right? Now, if the content of the messages actually said something that was indicative of some sort of grand conspiracy against him, I could understand why he might release those messages because it was actually the evidence to prove something. But I guess the evidence of Huck like behaving professionally and just declining a tryout and saying, sorry, I don't think you're going to work with our team very politely. What the fuck is the problem with that? You're not entitled to a tryout. You're not entitled to be on an Overwatch League roster.
That is one thing I wonder about, though, because in this climate where so many players are trying out for different teams and we're splitting up existing teams, that's where I really wonder if in Overwatch, because so much money is spent on the squad, whether there'll be more of a direction from above on who gets signed to the teams. Because obviously the majority of esports teams historically actually do go by the social aspect of the core, like the leader or the 2 or 3 players who've been there a long time. They kind of get to decide who joins the team often.
Let me just put it this way. Like, the Kraft family has made the most successful American esports team in recent memory, especially, we can say definitively since 2000. They're definitely probably in the last 30 years in American sports. I guess you probably have to go back to the 90s Bulls in order to even see something similar in terms of their level of dominance. This is an organization that is very good at managing their teams and also is a very top-down organization. And if you know anything about the New England Patriots, their sort of motto, Bill Belichick, their coach's motto, is sort of the next man up, right? Somebody gets injured, it's somebody else steps up. There's an expectation somebody else steps up and fills that role within the team, and it's worked really, really well for them. So I don't think that a lot of these owners who have a long history of success are going to be putting up with a lot of player bullshit. You know what I mean? They're just going to. The players really, thankfully, don't have any power within the Overwatch scene. Which sounds horrible, but they're going to get paid well, so it'll be okay, right? They're going to be protected. They've got all the benefits. So they're not going to get screwed. But when you look at you're not going to convince nobody's going to be bullying the Kraft family from the player's side, right? If you're a pain in the ass, you're going to be gone. Yeah. So I appreciate the fact that seems to have the orgs and the teams have a little bit more power within the Overwatch world.
And then the other motto is, it's easy to scout opponents when you just watch private videos of them practicing for the Super Bowl. And I think that was an unofficial motto, though, They kept that one on the low, kind of like the PSI of the footballs. Yeah, you're right, Kirby. So they did. Listen, that's all you need to know. If they can literally cheat and win Super Bowls without ever being punished, they're not going to fuck around in Overwatch. They're going to keep it just within the lines enough, and then keep it legal. Sort of.
I'm going to have really young players who are all 18 on the day of competition.
Yeah,
all that good shit.
The other nice thing about what's going on with Overwatch League is because, for example, we have all these teams. You have 16 teams in Apex. We have all these teams in China. We have, we have the Southeast Asian teams that are competing as well in OPC, and then we have 8 teams in NA and 8 teams in Europe that are competing right now in contenders, and that's not even including Overwatch League teams like the NRG roster in San Francisco that is entirely outside of that ecosystem. But we only have 9 announced Overwatch League teams and rumors of a 10th, right? Obviously, there was an article on ESPN by Jacob Wolf saying that Envy was going to be taking Dallas, which I can neither confirm nor deny, but 9, potentially 10, potentially more. But regardless, there are so many players, and they're all being condensed down into, yes, there are 12-man rosters, so we can sort of think of this as like double the number of actual teams. But even so, owners don't have to put up with a lot of bullshit right now. There are so many players to pick from that getting a pain in the ass player who's not really, really good is not really, it's a buyer's market, right, from the owner's perspective. So I think this behavior doesn't really help these players, and they probably should be careful about what they're doing because they have shockingly little leverage right now.
What did you think about the fact that we had this announcement where LW Blue just dropped out of Apex and won't be playing in Season 4? Obviously, it's begun already, but in theory, couldn't they have still played the whole league and still had time for Overwatch League? Is there any reason as to why that is?
I don't know what the reason is. I haven't asked the people that would have made that decision. So yet, because it hasn't been too pressing for me. But I do find it very odd that whoever bought that team to use an Overwatch League would not want them to compete in Apex and get the best practice possible prior to the start of the league. The only thing I can think of is that they want to send them to obviously they're not the Seoul team, so a location outside of Seoul to start doing publicity and sort of grassroots promotion, which might have conflicted with a deep run in Apex. But I would not have done that personally.
Isn't there also an issue, since, like you're saying, since Flower can't play, that's the main reason to sign that squad, really, right? It's like he's one of the core members of the team.
Sure, but there are also a bunch of other good Korean DPS players from other rosters that you can pick up at least in the interim.
I'm pretty sure you could slot in lots of Korean DPS players, and that team would probably perform at a similar level.
I mean, Birdring still isn't signed.
Yeah,
he's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent over in Korea, obviously, and one man did not make that team. Even I was actually talking about this earlier, but in Apex seasons, Flower didn't actually have great performances. He had a great performance at IEM Gyeonggi. He's had great performance in the World Cup as well. But if you look back at Apex season 2 and 3, it was quite underwhelming actually for somebody who's supposed to be like an absolute superstar level player.
I mean, he did have wrist issues, and one of the reasons why I'm happy about the only reason why I'm happy we don't get to watch him play is I'm hoping it will give him time to really fix his wrist problems and see some specialists about that. So,
yeah, it's strange whenever that's brought up. He reminds everybody that it's finger problems rather than wrist problems, and that apparently it's fixed, and he's perfectly fine. But I have a feeling that it's like a deeper issue that he hasn't quite figured out how bad it is. It's going to hit him when he's a bit older.
I think he needs to go, take some time off and actually deal with that. So,
okay, you said before that it was presumably Misfits will keep their squad together, and obviously they just had a change where they took out Reinforce. Is that actually a good move? I mean, isn't this a team where, at least with the past lineups, it was a little bit underwhelming, right?
Yeah, they were awful. They were really awful for the level of talent that was on their roster and the potential that they could have hit. They consistently underwhelmed and were at some points just straight bad. But this roster that they've now got it looks to be a really talented roster. They're probably going to add more people to the bench, flesh it out a little bit, maybe see if you need somebody to complement Swoosh, because we haven't seen him play Reinhardt at the moment. Maybe they want somebody else. But it's a good base to work from, this roster, I think, because they're performing at a much higher level than the previous one.
Kirby, since you have to compete against them, what's your read as the coach of 1-2-3 looking at the Misfits roster?
I actually have a bit of insight into Misfits, but I guess I need to do a disclaimer. I trialed for the coaching spot for them, but they decided to go with Mineral because they were just more comfortable with his past as a player and all that.
Right,
so
criticism.
I got to
So
watch
fuck them.
I got
Chat logs.
There's no hard feelings. They seem to be pretty happy with it.
Okay, this build-up's fucking amazing, mate. This better be some straight fire. Right, come on.
Let's go.
So yeah, I just for the few days I saw them, they have a lot of skilled players. Like Tvik and Logix look like the best DPS duo in Europe, up there in terms of like just the whole West, most likely. So they have the talent. They have a lot of solid players like Zappe, like Maniton at all the roles. Of course, there's the question mark for Swoosh, because transitioning from like a dive role from the Genji to the Winston, okay, people can see how that could work. But it doesn't mean necessarily that you understand the hero and understand its limits and how far you can actually push them. But in terms of Reinhardt, he literally has no experience playing the hero in a competitive setting. So it's a huge question mark.
Why did Reinforce just disappear? Like, do you think the fact that he already had sort of a position where he could just pivot straight into Analysis and on-air talent?
No, he still definitely wants to. He still definitely wants to play.
Okay.
He still definitely wants to
It's
play.
just a temporary thing where he's seeing how it works out.
But I think,
despite the fact that I repeatedly encourage him to stop playing, not because I think he's bad. I actually think he was performing individually at a pretty good level when he was on Misfits, but because, you could be a bench tank player in Overwatch League, or you can be talent, right off the start, and that's I wouldn't necessarily make a decision to go back and play again, but he is very passionate about it, so.
So it's one of those like serve in heaven or rule in hell type scenarios, Monte, is it?
That's right.
They
Exactly.
they had
Throw
that
the Milton in there.
They had that roster for so long though, and they were kind of like consistently underachievers in Europe. So like your performance recently doesn't necessarily matter because the players in their mind don't necessarily like put blame consciously, but very easily.
Was he really one of the issues, though? I always felt like the issues were they had all these talented players who were like, as a secondary role, I guess I could do this, and it would sort of maybe work.
I don't think it was in terms of talent for like any of those players. I think they had some issues in terms of figuring out the roles. When they came back from like Apex Season 2, they said, we learned a lot in Korea, blah, blah, blah. But then they made a role swap. They switched like who was playing flex, who was playing support, and all that, right? And then after that, it was months and months of like, trying to change who was playing Tracer, who was playing Genji, who was on the Soldier, all that. And so this change, if it does one thing, it probably puts them a bit more clearly into those roles and what they want to do.
Well, also Zebasai was straight up like, he's not a bad player, but he was a bad flex support player. And from what I understand, there were some communication issues with Nevix and synergy issues, because I think Nevix is a very strong player, but apparently it can be he does present some communication problems, like doesn't talk necessarily enough within that roster. It's weird too, because some players talk a lot on certain teams, but then when they're moved in with strong shot callers on a new team, they don't talk at all. So it's not like these problems are necessarily persistent. But I do think it's been interesting to watch all their roster swaps, and it seems like also Logix is a fantastic player, so that's also, like you say, with the duo with Tvik helping a lot in terms of giving them a little bit more power, and I think that Zebasai being on the Lucio role is better for him as a shot caller, and his individual ability on that hero seems better than it was on some of the other support heroes he was playing previously.
The old Misfits roster was like a Picasso painting. It was like they had all the pieces, but they just put them in really weird places, and it didn't function very well at all.
Except, so you're saying Picasso paintings don't function? I think most art historians would actually disagree with you.
You have to have, you have to look at it in the right light to be able to understand what was going on there. But no, the Misfits roster beforehand, like they had Zebasai, who's a strong shot caller, and they put him on a flex support that's like the furthest guy back. You watch when he plays is Lucio now, and he's like right up the front with everybody, calling and making sure he knows exactly what's happening in the fights.
Okay.
So he has to be on that kind of role to be able to have that.
So what you're saying is Misfits was a Cubist painting where all the pieces were there, but it had no depth to it, right? It was all angles were just presented on a flat surface.
No, the thing is, I'm kind of I'm feeling his analogy, because the key thing is when someone looks at like a Picasso, they don't really understand why it's good. They're like, that is weird, isn't it? And what you need is an art historian to explain, like, well, no, here's what he was trying to do, and here's the progression of evolution. And in the same way, when you looked at the Misfits team, right, you watched it and you were like, why is everyone hyping this team? But the key thing was when you heard them in interviews and in Twitlongers explain what they were trying to do and what they theoretically thought would work, then it had a logic to it. You're like, oh yeah, I see what they were trying to do there. It doesn't work at all, but you know, I can see in their brains why they all thought they could play this secondary role and then this guy could do this. Like that's actually a quality, you know, that's a secret. For all the young players out there, okay, that is a really good way to prop up your career, right? What you got to do is you've got to become friends with the commentators, with journalists, and all you do is, if you're a really good player but at the moment you're not in form, you just have to come up with amazing sort of like sophistry as to why you're playing badly. Like some of the players who've done this, like, it's amazing. Like some of them, like Forgiven in League of Legends, he's never had a bad game, because if you talk to him at the end of it, he just hypnotizes you and you're like, yeah, I guess it was a good game. It's just that the way we judge games and what your teammates were doing, and actually the opponent was wrong to beat you in that way. He should have actually played more honorably and done something more advanced, which he then would have failed at. Therefore, you would have won. So actually, yeah, you were right. You are good. And then you go away and you come out of the days like a minute later. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. What? But if you do a really good job, you could see you either win and people acknowledge you, or you prop yourself up like that. That's like a little tip for all the young players out there. Alternatively, just say all that in public, like Ajax, you know. So just do that. Just do that as well if you want. There's two ways to go. So I've got a question for you.
No. So for me, it wasn't so much about, like, if the Picasso painting analogy only works for me in the sense that I saw Misfits like Picasso's masterpiece Guernica, where it was just this horrible, visceral feeling that I got while watching it, where there's like the screaming horse and like reinforced was the woman holding the baby that was Tavik, that was like dead in her arms. It was just this absolute horrific painting that really showed, the results of the complete botch of that entire roster, right? So more of a specific Picasso for me, rather than in an abstract Cubist sense. Okay.
So one thing that Monty was very excited about, he's contractually obliged to be excited about, was the draw for the Overwatch World Cup. Now, I've got a question before we get onto that. What were the surprises of the qualification for this? Because obviously with the different qualifiers splitting up different sets of teams, there was a couple, right, where like someone was at borderline, could have made it in. Which were the surprise teams to make it, do you think?
Canada over Russia might have been a bit of a surprise, but it's not. I mean, most people had those as pretty dead level. The game between them was a weird one as well, and whoever lost was going to face South Korea, so it was rest in peace for them.
Like if Russia had been in one of the other qualifiers, you think they would have made it?
Depends which one. I don't think they're a very strong team. I don't think Canada is particularly either, if you look at the top 8. But
yeah,
which one would they have made it through? Maybe Sydney. They might have had a chance to beat Sweden or Australia, but that's
I don't,
pushing it, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that. I guess it was, for me, it was more about the teams that almost qualified, like Japan. Obviously, Japan was a huge surprise in a PC title for them to perform as well as they did and nearly win against Australia, taking it all the way to the very end of the 5th map. So that was shocking. I don't think anybody could or would have predicted that.
Is there any kind of like a scene or a league system in Japan for this game? Because actually, Japan is a very weird outlier in esports. Like if you notice, aside from, funnily enough, the console and arcade games, they have very little presence in your RTS games, FPS games. They just kind of don't exist there.
I mean, they do have a League of Legends league in Japan that has been getting more and more popular. The Japanese teams do play in OPC in Taiwan, so they're part of like the Southeast Asian League. There are two Japanese teams there currently. There were 2 last season as well, but they weren't. I mean, some of the players from the Japan national team were there, but not all of them are there currently. So they're I think like the very good Japanese players have just not been competing in that and have been not on the same roster together. So it's weird. I feel like they could form a pretty decent team, but they just have their players all spread out.
that was the strange thing for me watching Japan, is that when you look at all of their teams across all of the tournaments they've competed in, they've got slammed by every other region. But then they managed to form one team, one roster that's actually really good. So there's clearly there's potential at least for one roster to do well there. But they continue to get shit stomped in the Pacific Championship, back last year in APAC, just everywhere.
They're still getting crapped on, like in OPC.
Yeah. So I don't really understand it. Like, how did the creation of the Japanese national team manage to draw together more talent than, competing in actual tournaments that happen all the time for really large prize pools?
Two of the guys who are on Liberland Supreme, which is in the OPC, Dayarton and Jasper, were on the Japanese national team and had good performances. And so far, they've won one map and lost 15. They're 1-15 in maps and 0-5 in matches. Like, they are getting destroyed in OPC. And this is, where Blank, which is Team Australia, and Flash Wolves, which was Team Taiwan from the same tournament, are playing. This is the same league. Both Blank and Flash Wolves are doing pretty well. And these guys are just absolutely wrecked. But also, Blank played against a Japanese team and nearly lost. So it's weird. And I like Sideshow saying, I think you just have to... You have to think that they should just condense these rosters, right? Try and move into something else.
I fucking love that name though, OPC, because it just in my head it's just like, who's down with OPC? Yeah, you know me. That should be the commercial for the league. So I've got a question though. One of the teams that Japan obviously had quite a big result against was they drew against Finland, which fucked Finland, and as a result we didn't even get Finland into the playoffs of that qualifier. In theory, Finland, majority NIP players, was that not a shock that they weren't really in contention to get to the Overwatch World Cup?
Yeah, that was very strange.
Sideshow, you literally now not only chronicle the history of fucking NIP, but you love NIP, and you are the number one candidate. You advocate for NIP. So come on, explain this. Explain yourself.
I wasn't an advocate for them at that time. They had their time. They were dipping off towards that point anyway. And the fact that they, as a team, thought that they needed roster changes when they were coming into the next tournament, which was Contenders, I think shows that they realized there was something up with that roster anyway. Like, it had reached its potential in that sense. But also the fact that you add in Taimu. Taimu's not just the guy that you can throw into any team. He has a very specific role within Envious, and it plays a lot of big kind of informer metas, where carry heroes. But in this one, he only really plays, well, now he's actually shown tons more in Contenders, but at the time, he really only played Soldier 76, and that doesn't really fit with the rest of NIP at all. Okay. The player that he replaced was a star Tracer player, which is massive in this meta, and they didn't have that, and they also looked like they were missing a bit of cohesion between the two of them. After the tournament, they replaced Kinnell with Big Goose, which was a step up, I think, in terms of what it did for their team. So. Okay.
I like that alias as well. I always wonder when people think of these aliases. Usually the alias is cringe because you're trying to make it cool, right? Like Death Killer 477, because that's what a kid thinks is cool. Which kid's like, yeah, I'm the Big Goose, motherfucker. You're looking at a Big Goose over here like that. Why is that his alias? It's mental, isn't it? Absolutely mental.
There was a Singapore guy called Rage Against Tofu, which
that's
I thought...
sick. That's straight
Rage of Tofu.
Rage of Tofu. That was a fucking great idea.
Amazing.
Rage Against Tofu's better. I think you come up with a better name for him, mate. That's because not only that, but who the fuck would be angry against tofu? You just don't eat it, don't you? The only people who eat it are the least aggressive people in the world. Not least because apparently if you eat tofu, it's got it does something like either lowers your testosterone or it has estrogen in it or something mental. So they actually found a study that men who eat tofu literally do sort of become feminized in a way. Which,
I would just like to note at this point in time that Thorin is not a scientist and to not trust anything he says on his side.
I also don't eat no fucking tofu. I do rage against tofu, mate. All pure testosterone over in this motherfucker. Don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it.
He's definitely not a scientist, guys. Don't worry.
I'm not. Anyway, listen, nothing I say on this show is confirmed, is official. Not even my own thoughts, because I might need to backtrack on them at a later date, So this is all just speculation. What about the German squad? Even though in theory, there's no top German team or whatever, and the German players have been in other teams, Germany has a long history in esports. They've got a few good players who've been on some teams. Why is Germany such a non-factor, really?
mega washed up old players, and like some people that don't have as much talent as the people they're playing against. It's like Germany hasn't been unlocked really at all in Overwatch yet.
Yeah, also, like some of the players from talking to them at the Overwatch World Cup are still very motivated to be playing with some of these rosters. And obviously, Internet Hulk has been coaching recently, so hasn't been playing the game as much. But some of I think that between different players on that roster, there was a very large gap in motivation between certain players and other ones. So
okay,
there wasn't a lot of, I think, incentive to win.
But they had a few good players, in my opinion, like at the DPS, like Cranks, really good Genji.
Yeah, Cranks. Yeah,
that Nesh, who plays a lot of different stuff.
Well, they also did make it to the playoffs. You know, they did make top 2 in their group, so it's not like they completely shit the bed or anything like that.
See, that's one of the rare areas, Monty, where actually your theory about geolocation could have something to it, because in Britain, okay, one of the way we watch sports is we have tons and tons of sports, but basically the majority of people just watch football. You've got a few people who are a bit more weird who watch rugby, and only very, very rich people watch cricket, basically. But whenever it's a national sport, partly because we used to only have 4 channels, everyone watches the national teams, right? So some people watch like the national cricket team and don't really care about cricket, and they'll watch like the rugby when it's the 5 Nations or whatever. So if you could actually sell people in the UK, listen, there's actually a sort of sport where we can thrash Germany. That's a seller right there. That's a fucking line that you can get people in the door. People will just start talking shit. Like, people in Britain, okay, obviously Wimbledon's pretty big, like tennis is pretty big, but people weren't that into it. Like, they used to just be pieces of shit who just like supported Roger Federer or whatever. He's not even from Britain, obviously. But when Andy Murray became good at tennis, magically everyone, did you watch the tennis? Oh, I love that. So listen, there's a lot of turncoat motherfuckers that you could get to say, oh, Overwatch League, yeah, I'm into Overwatch. Yeah, it's the shit. UK, love them. So, okay, let's go on to the draw then that took place. So obviously, the main thing about the draw was that Monty had a chance to be like, I really hope the United States team bring forth an excellent performance and match up with Korea in good form and perhaps start to turn the tide that's been going on in esports and show a new generation of American esports. But instead, he was just sort of like, ha ha ha, the tears will flow again. And people immediately began to question his patriotism, actually. So that was the actual result, right? Monty, why so cynical so early? That's the question.
I just like to see delusion smashed, Thorin. I like to see them shattered into a million pieces, and for the rightful order of who is actually good to shine through in the end, right? So I was really hoping, because I had already, usually on competitive Overwatch, the scene is hardcore enough now that you normally see very reasonable opinions about the power level of different teams. But after that Santa Monica World Cup qualifier, we started getting some posts in some of these threads that were like, wow, America's so good. I think they can beat South Korea. And I was like, yes, this is what I look for right here.
I think the vast majority of people, though, after they saw Korea match with USA, just had a flooding disappointment if they were US fans. I think you've done so much pushing early on in Overwatch that people now realize.
That's good. That's the kind of visceral fear that I like people to experience.
The Twitch chat was all just no words of it.
Sideshow, in theory, it probably is better to play a team like Korea earlier, though, if you want to beat them. Like, in the final, there'd be more pressure on you. You'd be more concerned. Maybe you can catch them out now at the beginning of the bracket. Could the USA not beat Korea? Couldn't it happen?
I think USA does look like a reasonably good team, and Korea so far has just shit-stomped really bad teams, or like fairly bad teams. I think it'll be closer than a total whitewash. They might be able to take a map. I expect it to be relatively competitive compared to what Korea's done so far in the World Cup. But I think the chance of them actually winning
would be the best. What would be the best chance in terms of the game mode?
It depends what the situation is, because at the moment Korea have pretty much only been running like these Reinhardt comps, like
not assault.
No, definitely not Assault. I think probably Control is going to be the one where they've got the most chance, but Korean teams in general have been pretty good on Control as well. I don't know, to be honest. It's probably either Escort or Control, but it's going to be like insanely tough either way.
Okay, so Kirby, I know that for the purposes of tournaments like this, you're entirely French, but what do you think about the USA's chances?
I think I'd probably agree with Sideshow, where it seems unlikely, but I don't believe that there's no chance that they, couldn't win at all.
Still hope. Still that little flickering flame. It's almost gone out, but there's still some hope it could happen.
Well, like the thing with Korea is they tried a lot of like Reinhardt Zarya and then the Junkrat during like that scrim that got broadcasted on Twitch or whatever. Yes. And then people were like, oh my God, this is meta shattering. This is like the new thing and everything. But I'm still not convinced that.
I like to consider that trolling.
Yeah. They were just styling on scrubs. It was meta for a small
technical terminology there.
Styling on scrubs.
But what does that say? What does that say about the team? That they just felt like they were confident enough that they didn't really give a shit and wanted to do that. So have they really been tested at this point?
It's not like totally don't give a shit, because it was meta for a small amount of time. Like when you saw this Nexus Cup bracket play out and a miraculous youngster were running these kind of compositions and end up beating like the tier 2 Korean teams, which had never happened before, right? And the Chinese team had never beaten the Korean teams at an event like that. It made the Korean teams take notice. They started copying the strategy a little bit and bringing it over, and they were like enthusiastic about it. So I think they were really trying to push it, but it hasn't bled over to Apex. So I think they just had a peak of enthusiasm about it, and then it's kind of drained off. I don't think they were totally trolling.
No, because ironically, with the buffs to Junkrat, it is like pretty likely that we're going to see more of him in the future. So, like,
and
sure, they have.
We did see Taimu playing Junkrat recently as well.
Yeah, and that was still before the buffs, which it's buffs to the tire, a second mine that he can use.
Well, what do you think about that as an actual move then? Because a lot of people, I think, were a bit puzzled by that getting buffs. What do you think?
Well, it's problematic because it's not just one buff; it's a buff at the same time of a potential nerf to D.Va, which is seen as like that hero that's going to be able to absorb that spam, right? So if a meta goes towards Junkrat, it becomes really focused on those chokes and on just spamming kind of like crazy, which I don't think is really good for the game. So that being said, they do have some time playing these types of composition, but the main point I'm trying to get at is if we don't know where the meta is heading, then we don't really know how good a roster is going to be. Like, it's still in 2 months, right? That these playoffs are going to happen. Anything could happen, and if we're not sure as to like what those rosters are, because I've heard that potentially rosters could still change. They could still pick other players.
Yes, they can. They can change the rosters.
So it's a big question mark for a lot of these matchups. Like, okay, sure, Korea is a region that has a lot of depth. They're always going to have depth, and so I'm pretty sure they're going to have a strong team. But on that given day, are they going to be so strong that it's 100-0 chance for them? I'm not convinced. Like, it's still up in the air.
Does the USA have about the best team that you could sort of put together, taking into account personality and that sort of thing? That might.
Well, that was the determination of the committee, right? And particularly Kyle, who's been coaching the team. They did do a pretty extensive tryouts with like 24 different players, and we're having them scrim against each other. And the committee made Owl style. See, look, the Owl style worked. It produced a pretty good team, right? So they did try to go for the synergy instead of getting necessarily all the biggest name players, and you can't really argue with it. I thought they performed quite well in the Santa Monica stop.
They actually almost do have the biggest name players on almost every role as well, though. I think maybe Jake is the only guy that didn't actually perform that well when he was playing with LG Evil, but has unlocked some kind of like extra potential and had the leadership role and everything within the team.
Well, he's a streaky player, to be fair. He did have, he's inconsistent. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off.
But for the rest of the roster, they pretty much picked up who you would have at number one throughout the US in terms of their roles, I think. Like, is there anybody else that you'd put in over them in terms of literal people who were born in the US?
I'd have just put Siegel in there and let him pick whoever him and his girlfriend wanted to play.
That's a surefire route to
there we go.
qualify.
There we go.
That team is called Energy. So
Exactly, yeah.
But even like talking about synergy is dependent on like what composition you run, because you might have a different like shot calling structure if it's dive or if it's more standard stuff where, you know, maybe the Lucia can be more vocal as opposed to like the divers. So even if we're saying, oh, these aren't the biggest names and they're, you know, making their choice based on synergy, there's no guarantee that in a different meta that synergy would still be there on different heroes.
So who, obviously we're months out now, so this is an ideal time to ask this actually. Who would be like a dark horse pick, but like obviously everyone's going to say South Korea will win anyway, but let's say either make the final, potentially win. Who else at least do you think could do it as a dark horse pick? Has China showed us anything?
Well, the problem is like, we didn't discuss the overall shape of the bracket draw, but the Korea, China, France side of the bracket is USA side of the bracket is way stronger than the other side of the bracket.
Yeah,
sure.
It's unfortunately very lopsided. China at least had, but the thing with China and France is that they play basically just one dive composition, so it's really hard to get a feeling for the depth of that roster. China did really well. They played dive. I mean, it was impressive watching guys like Undead and Eileen and how much mechanical talent they have. And not only that, but they were quite deliberate in a lot of their strategies and approaches on points as well. So, but does that carry over? Because it's not only, when we think about the World Cup, I mean, it's the end of August right now, but basically it's 2 months from now when BlizzCon actually happens. So it's not only going to be this patch, you know, this patch right now, but also probably the next patch and whatever happens on that. And that will probably, I would guess, be the World Cup patch, given their, you know, schedule of patching. It could be, but it could also be 3 patches out. We just don't know. So it's really hard to get a read on what these rosters are going to look like on such a long timeline.
Also, there's been so many different metas that have happened that, like, I'm just looking through the teams now and kind of thinking about who their star players are in my head, or like when they were strong previously. For example, Australia were kind of made their name back in the triple tank meta. They weren't a team that was good at dive, but have only had an opportunity to play in the Pacific Championship when dive meta was a thing. The Team Canada has kind of the potential to be good if there was like a Pharah Mercy meta, perhaps, which is quite possible. There's so many different, and also it could just be a meta that we've never seen before. Like triple support might become meta, and you kind of have to play that. And that's the thing.
And players could be swapped out. For example, like Bishu could be playing on the Team Canada roster if it's not a Pharah meta, and maybe Mangachu like takes a step back or something like that. In
general, though, it does definitely seem like that side of the bracket is much weaker. If you're looking at their performances now with the rosters that they currently have, it seems like a very easy road for UK to the finals, which I was very pleased about.
So, okay, touching on the topic of China, though, I asked you before the show, like, if anyone had been watching the Overwatch Premier Series, which is the Chinese tournament. But Sideshow, you said you watched some of it and the top teams. Obviously, one of them you've referred to already, Miraculous Youngster. What is the level of Chinese Chinese Overwatch like from what you've seen so far? Like, is their meta very different?
It kind of was for a brief period. Like I referenced this Nexus Cup that happened in between the Apex seasons. That did seem like a big meta shift because everyone was going with the Reinhardt Zarya. They were playing what people dubbed the Chinese anti-dive composition. The idea was that they were just kind of eating the dive comp. They had they were playing it with like a Reaper McCree or McCree Tracer or something like this, where the idea is that you're just kind of bursting down the tank as quickly as possible and using the Zarya bubbles to get onto people, stuff like that. They've shifted away from that. We see a lot more Pharah Mercy than we do in the West, but kind of equivalent with what we've seen in Korea. We don't see very much Reinhardt Zarya in China or Korea at the moment, actually. Most of the teams are favoring the Winston Diva kind of dive, whereas that's started to become a bit more prevalent over in the West. But China don't seem to be doing anything radical right now, but they always have that potential because they just seem to go with whatever. You know, they get an idea in their heads and they run with it. They were running with Sombra for months and months before anybody else was, trying it out in all sorts of really weird compositions, like playing without Lucios for ages. Most of the time, it just means that they suck. but sometimes it means that they find something new that nobody else has discovered.
Because, I mean, with the setup where obviously, again, they will compete also in like APAC or whatever it is, right, as their version of the development league. So they will kind of develop, presumably, their own little ecosystem in a pond over somewhere else, right? Not really connected to the rest of the world. Yeah,
they have kind of tournaments every now and then where they play against some of the Korean teams. They tend never to play against the best Korean teams, so it's difficult to like gauge where they're at. They play against like Runaway back when they weren't that good, Uncia when they were changing their team around, who else? NC Foxes they played against in the most recent one, but they don't happen very often, and they're in the Premier Series, as you said, which is like their development league. Kind of isolated, so they just have their own meta at times that goes crazy.
They did look good during their qualifier matches. It's just we don't know if they were really tested compared to like other teams. The
World Cup they blitzed through. The World Cup they didn't drop a map, right? But they weren't playing against particularly strong teams. They weren't playing against anybody that you would put like as a contender for BlizzCon, particularly, were they?
No, but they did look very clean in their own play, right? Like their execution was really, really tight, and their individual play was really good as well. So yeah, they didn't drop a map, but they weren't even close to dropping a map. Nobody was fucking with them at all. Like synergy was excellent. So the question is, can they do it without the dive meta, right?
And at the moment, there only seem to be like two good teams in China. There's a couple of teams that are like kind of getting up to their level, but LGD and Miraculous Youngster at the moment are pretty much head and shoulders above the rest of the competition. There's a couple of teams that try and challenge them, but it looks like they slot in somewhere within like the other decent teams around the world.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about contenders then. So being as we have Kirby here on the show, and this team 1-2-3 has somehow flukily sort of gotten off to a decent start. You know, they've got the odd game, they've stolen them from here and there. You know, while it's still lasting, what's working, Kirby? How are things working out at the moment?
Well, like we did make just before I joined, they did bring on two new players, which are Finzi, who used to be on Movie Star Writers, and Hafikul, used to be on Fnatic and all that. Sure. So it's not even the same team that qualified during Season 0. So because of that, it has forced us to be a bit more like simplistic in what we want to run in terms of composition. Okay. But even before that, they were pretty good at just playing the Monkey Diva Soldier dive comp, which has been pretty much a standard of like this meta. So you set up your Soldier and you try to like set up peels for him and just play off of that. Of course, a lot of people were talking about Mistakes, the Russian player. That was the Tracer player before. And with him leaving, a lot of people thought that, you know, the level of the team would drop. But adding Finzi to the Soldier and then putting Snillo on that Tracer role has worked really, really well for us.
Snillo has been impressive in picking up that Tracer role for a player as good as Mistakes immediately. And Hafikul also, I think, has been doing quite well. He was pretty mediocre on that Fnatic roster, but he is a flexible player, and it looks like his level on an individual sense has gone up. Also, Tonic is a very good tank.
So they already had some pieces in the previous roster, which is why they did so well in the Season 0. But then I knew about Hafi and Finzi, the level that they could play at, but I was really impressed by Snillo when I started coaching them.
Okay. So obviously another team that's had some changes, they've swapped around some of the roles of the player, is E United, who did well in the Season 0, but thus far have lost their first two games. What do I make of E United overall?
It's hard to say, because I think they were one of the most like cerebral dive team when it comes to like how you set up dives, how you use your ults, and how you position your backline, and how to deal with that. But it seems like they're just completely off base and not playing to like what they were used to. Well,
it's also worth noting that with E United, two of their players were on the UK team, right? And they were at the last qualifier in Santa Monica. So they weren't practicing as a team as a result of that, because Cruz and Boombox were both literally the week before Contenders started. So they really didn't have a lot of time to get back on track as a team in practice for that first match, and they did make it extremely competitive against Cloud9. So I have a feeling that this is the raw talent on this roster. I have a feeling that as the season goes on, we're going to see good results from them. It's just about getting back into form.
Not getting practice is really going to hurt United, I think, because as you say, they're like a teamwork-based team. They don't have
and they weren't practicing for this patch.
Talent.
Yeah. So it's like they were playing on a non-Doomfist patch, and then 1 week after their qualification for the Overwatch World Cup, they're playing on an entirely different patch and an entirely different meta with heroes that they haven't been practicing. So, and you would think, at least on a United roster, that Cruz would be probably the guy who's playing the Doomfist. We usually see the Genji players sort of flip over to that role. Of course, not always, but that might be an expectation that they have of him, and he may not have the necessary practice to do that. So a lot of talent on the roster, though, so I think it's less concerning.
And they have the hard schedule, right?
Yeah, and we already saw them week to week improve. Like, they got dumpstered in the first week of competition, but then they made it very close against they're like furbished C9 roster.
Well, they were also switching things around in terms of like who was playing Sombra, for example. The first week it was Boombox on Sombra duty on like assault maps, whereas last week it was Cruz taking on that role. So like more the Korean style with you have the two supports and the Sombra. So like it seems like there's a bit maybe frustration going on in the roster of them like trying different things and not being sure which direction to go. So obviously going into that match, we're not sure what it's going to be. Maybe they're going to stick to what they did, this week. Maybe they're going to go back to what they did previously. So
classically, it was Unfixed that played the Sombra anyway.
Yes,
it was weird actually, because Unfixed have been playing it for months, and then they start like throwing it over to different players and trying out different things.
Because it really depends what they want to do with the composition. The solo healer stuff really is more of an assault type thing, whereas the when they put Unfixed on Sombra was when they tried to do like a 3 DPS style with having Cruz still on the Genji and on the Tracer, but it seems like for some reason they haven't had the success that they used to have, so they're trying different things.
Do you have, Sideshow, do you have big expectations for the Cloud9 Europe lineup as it currently stands?
It just depends what they do with it, because at the moment when you look at the roster as it's listed on the Overwatch Contenders website, Sinatra's back to a sub, and they've brought in Mikey A, who's now listed as like their starter DPS. It just seems like they're going to mix people around so much, but from what I've heard, they're performing super well in terms of like their matchups against teams in scrims and stuff over the last week. They obviously beat E-United when E-United weren't looking as bad as they did before. They look like they were a strong team, but it all depends who they decide to switch up. It should continue improving for them if they keep adding in new people, but if they're going to make radical changes like that every week, it's just going to be a bit of a roll the dice.
I think the two players you keep, though, it's interesting that they put Mikey A in. I think he did perform pretty well at the World Cup, but it is a bit weird considering that Sinatra does have all this talent. That could have been a test for them, because remember, Cloud9 is also trying to find rosters for Overwatch League, and as we alluded to earlier, Sinatra is not a player who is going to be able to play in the first half of the season because he's too young. So what I would think they're doing, without having talked to them or knowing for sure, is that they probably, Sinatra, I'm sure, is trying out for many teams, and Cloud9 was probably just seeing what kind of synergy they had and wants to find, they might be moving Mikey A in for the rest of the season in anticipation of having to use him as a starter, at least initially. So you don't want to keep running with Sinatra for too long, because there's no point really if you're trying to get ready for the start of Overwatch League this year. I do like, the thing that I really like about what Cloud9 has done is that they had the right idea about the core of that team, which is you keep Mozasa and you keep Gray. These guys coordinate the shot calling. It's why the Portuguese squad did better than expected with a bunch of rookies. They are very strong in-game leaders, and they have a lot of synergy. So those are the two guys that I think are like the most valuable parts and what they should be building out the roster around. So if we're going to see them make more changes as Contenders goes on, because realistically for Cloud9, this is nothing but a laboratory to figure out what the best team is for Overwatch League, right? In theory. So why wouldn't you just keep switching out players as long as you can? There is a roster lock, I believe, after Sideshow this week, right?
Week 4. After week four, I believe.
After week 4, okay. So they'll have to stop it then.
But as far as I know, then you can still draft in players as long as they haven't played for other teams that have already competed in Overwatch Contenders. So you can still make changes. You can't be like mixing from team to team. And the thing that confuses me about your theory of Cloud9 kind of mixing and matching for the Overwatch League is the reports from the Korean players that Cloud9 sent out emails to them all looking for specifically 6 Koreans.
This could also be a bench roster for because remember 12 players on a team, so they may be looking to have those 2 different sort of Western and Korean teams. I mean, but it wouldn't surprise me.
That, though, the weird thing about that, though, is that if you have 6 Koreans and one of them drops out or one of them drops out of form or something, and you filled the other 6 slots in the Overwatch League with a sister team,
Korean,
what the hell are you going to do there?
Start learning Korean now.
I mean, let's be realistic. Smart Western players will start learning Korean now.
Verbo's already started.
Yeah.
He's already said he started learning Korean. He can see the advance of Immortals. He's seen players slowly leaving.
So by the way, it was so funny because I tweeted out with Immortals, I was like taking bets on how long before Immortals has an all-Korean roster. And everybody was like, no, like Agilities and Grim Reality were the ones who were performing well. Like Fate and Kariv were the ones who weren't like performing well on that particular day, which... you can make an argument about that, but historically, Fate and Kariv had played better. But guys, this isn't about who is playing better on a given day. There aren't good tanks and supports in the West, really, besides a very small number who are probably already locked up and signed. So Fate and Kariv are not replaceable by Western players. You know who's replaceable by Western players? Western DPS players. You could go out and pick up Kongdu players, try and get some top tier talent from Korea if you're Immortals. So I don't know. I think that roster is just a matter of time before it goes all Korean. But like you say, the learning of Korean quite important. I'm actually surprised as it stands that Cloud9 is fielding all these rosters of different players because as Thorin and I have discussed with Jack, the owner of Cloud9, in previous esports salons on this very topic about importing talent, Jack is very gung-ho publicly about fielding all Korean rosters in the West. So I would have thought that he would be one of the first people to go and get an entirely Korean roster.
Maybe this is just about winning contenders for them then. This is why I don't quite buy it's like...
This is the tryout. The other one was just to keep out the Ajaxes of the world. This is the real tryout.
The other thing that Jack does, famously, is that he will contract a bunch of players and then sell them to other organizations, right? He ran teams through Challenger and League of Legends, and he sold that roster of his sort of washed-up players to Wes Edens, who owns the Milwaukee Bucks, and they became FlyQuest, which is one of the fucking worst names I've ever heard for an esports team.
Listen, Big Goose could get in that motherfucker any day he wants.
Big Goose on the FlyQuest.
My name is FlyQuest Big Goose. I don't know any of those words. What is
His
this
tag
esports,
would be fly Big Goose. That'd be pretty great, actually.
Not bad.
At least you have the synergy. But so it also wouldn't surprise me if the plan for C9 is to win contenders, draft like 12 Koreans, and then sell his contenders winning roster to like another Overwatch League owner. That would not. He's like, look at this roster I got. Stan Kroenke, like.
I would also, if I'm them, just be really cutthroat. Like, since the fans want these Immortals players to be there, they want players who are Western players. I'd have them as my bench players, but doing all the PR stuff like, oh yeah, I'm close to getting in the lineup, guys. I think I might play next week. And then when you've got like a throwaway game that means nothing, you bring them on. The fans. Oh,
the reality show with
brilliant.
them.
Yeah, love this. Yeah, it's sick. That would be a good idea.
Be great. Yeah. I look forward to Jake's experiences of living in a house with 11 Koreans.
Also, by the way, the sad thing is, the first Westerner who does get like fluent at Korean, like you're thinking to yourself naively, oh, with the teamwork they have, and they're so respectful to their coach and stuff, this will probably be a lot of fun, very professional. The level of abuse you will experience if they don't have a Korean coach, if you're doing in any way badly, you've never experienced this level of flame. They will fucking destroy. You'll wish you didn't understand Korean, mate. This is going to be harsh for you. Like that hierarchy is enforced, boys. That's not just natural, So Okay, let's talk a bit about the NA contenders then. So, okay, we're talking about Immortals at the moment. Highly touted team. Immortals and FaZe, often touted as they're contending with Envious, it's like Rogue is the best Western teams. What have you made of contenders so far in NA?
Surprising. Very surprising results. This has been... we have to remember that Envision bought Team Liquid's slot because all of Team Liquid's players went to go play Quake at QuakeCon. So I did not expect Envision to be performing at the level they are, and for Immortals to be at the bottom of the table at 0-2 with only a single map to their name, considering their extremely strong performance in Contenders of the last season of Contenders.
Sure. I mean, obviously, listen, losing to Envy is not the end of the world, but what do you think of the Envision squad Sideshow?
It's weird. They changed a couple of players around, but it seems to... I don't think that's made the difference. I can't really tell what was holding them back last season because they were playing at a much lower level last season, to the point where I wasn't even paying that much attention to them. They were just like sat right at the bottom, getting stomped by most of the legit.
And this guy watches Chinese Overwatch.
Season 1.
Fucking hell, the disrespect. Okay, keep going.
They bring in Jaru, who's like a real legitimate talent.
He was actually really cool to see on Toronto Esports, and I'm glad he found like a new home when they didn't qualify, because he was a definitely a bright spot in a team that didn't qualify.
And he's been a bright spot on Envision as well. So it's like, at what point does this guy hit his cap? That's what I'm starting to ask now. Is like, at what point does he play against a team where he does start to get shut down or doesn't have that kind of performance?
To put this in perspective, his kill death differential when they played against Immortals was plus 31. That is very good.
He's got some of the best stats across. In fact, he might have some of the best stats, across the entirety of Contenders in terms of the Genji play. And he always seems to bring out the big clutch things when it matters. It's not like Agility's getting the 6K Nanoblade that only resets them for another 20 seconds. He's actually doing this. Look, like he looks at the situation, realizes that he needs the clutch, and he pulls it out, consistently for them. Also changing their main tank and possibly the way that they've structured their team and calling, they look way more coordinated than they did last season. I don't really know what's going on there, but they have made a massive leap upwards to the point where they're probably going to be contending for a playoff spot, even if they hadn't beaten like 2 top teams already.
So something weird happened this week too. So let me ask. So Numlocked comes back, and your UK compatriot, and he has a decent game up against Immortals where they win, and now all of a sudden he's been replaced by your other friend, Christopher, right, on this roster. So what is going on there? Why was this change made? Because it was my understanding that Christopher
the other way around, right?
It was the other way around. It was
the other way around. Yes, yeah. So what's going on there with Christopher? Because he left because he's trialing for Overwatch League teams, right?
Yes. He had tryouts for some of the Overwatch League teams that we were talking about. So he felt like he wanted to pursue that first. And from what I heard, the Envision guys were like understanding of that. With what you were saying about
Singularity.
Yeah, there's
now he's playing Contenders anyway.
There's a lot of stuff going on. But you were talking about Jaru, who of course is a good talent, a good Genji player, but I don't believe that magically he became that much stronger compared to what we saw previously of him in Toronto, right? So I think it's more about them clicking more as a unit with not only Jaru, but also McGravy and Tiny. They have this thing where they all flex to the diva based on what they want to play. If they want to play the Pharah, that's going to be Tiny, so they put someone else on the diva. If they want to play Genji and Tracer, then it's Tiny playing diva, and the soldier can swap here and there. So they had this kind of like triple flex system, and I think bringing in Chris, from what he told me, has helped them a lot in terms of understanding dive and in understanding like what you want to go for and how you set up those jumps. And so that success is, sure, we can mention the individualities, but I think it's just finding the right people and finding a mutual understanding in that regard.
Chris should charge them for the coaching they did for that team.
Yes, I agree with that.
Because when he was playing with them, obviously he's a big vocal guy. He understands the game. He's had big performances before. When I saw him coming into the team, I expected him to be like the most vocal caller in the team. He was going to show them. So I wasn't that surprised that they had a great performance in week 1. But then when they switched Numlocked in and they were still playing at the same level, that's when I was super surprised. So.
Well, to be fair, back when Numlock was on NRG, that was one of the things they asked from him as well, was to be the primary shot caller of the team, right? When he was busy like flip. That's very true. It never worked. They never had any coordination. This is a very true story. So I'm just saying it's interesting that like. Just because it didn't work with Numlocked on Energy doesn't mean that his calls were being listened to. Like, we don't know. So perhaps something that we're taking away here is that with Numlocked on this team now, who did look better than he ever had on Energy, albeit it was just a single match, perhaps in this team, they are more willing to listen to his shot calls, or the shot caller is somebody else, right? It's hard to say.
Because I think Numlocked also had difficulty when he was playing back on Dignitas. When he used to play there, he was one of the shot callers, but people, as far as I'm aware, wouldn't listen to him. He didn't quite have the power in the team to be able to like settle down the other like DPS players and stuff like that.
Dignitas was a mess back then, switching like roles around and everything. So I don't know what was going on there, but maybe
he's just been insanely unlucky, and now he's finally hit the team that fits him.
But from what I understand, when Chris first started trialing with Vision, things were kind of strange in how they set it up dives and everything. And he took the time with them to say, no, like you guys are, I wouldn't say doing this wrong, but he was very critical and they were willing to listen. And that's how, in my opinion, they got really good all of a sudden. Did that then create a better environment for when Numlock comes in and then Fire takes on more of that shot calling? Maybe. I'm not quite sure at that point.
So a team that, in terms of like star names, don't have the same appeal as some of the others is the Kangaroo Squad, who obviously I core them. People will remember some of them initially were poached over to become the TSM squad, and then some of them were in RG, and they were all over the place, but 3 of them are back together again. They've got some other players in there. What do you actually make of that as a team? Because in theory they were quite highly touted before the whole TSM debacle.
They don't play a whole lot of different composition, but they play one pretty well, which is just the Soldier Tracer and the Monkey Diva. So you just put Baby Bay on the head scan, you put Michael, who's going to harass on the Tracer, you have Bishu, who's a really good Diva, as well as, who's their support? Dogman, right?
Dogman, yes.
Yeah, who has the flexibility to not only play the Zen and the Ana, but also go to the Sombra and flex onto that potentially. So all of a sudden, you pretty much have all the tools you need in the meta. Well, I don't know about the upcoming meta, but at least they were a strong team.
I mean, this last match, we did see Michael play a lot of Reaper and some Doomfist as well. So I think that they've been starting to show a little bit more variation in terms of what they've been playing, and it has worked. I mean, they did take a win over FNRG FE, which is sort of another surprise that team hasn't looked quite as strong as we thought they might coming in.
Yeah, they played the Reinhardt Doomfist when they played against Renegades as well. It looks like they're starting to broaden their repertoire a little bit, but they always have been a team that fairly rigidly stuck to the meta. Back when they were playing in the, what was it at the time, Winter Premier or something like this, when they first made their name, they were playing like the quad tank, and they just stuck to it the whole time, and they worked on just perfecting their own play. I like watching Kungana because they very rarely make that many mistakes. They don't have as inconsistent performances as a lot of the North American teams do. They just grind out their games. They play a good macro game where they take charge of their ultimates well. The one issue when you watch them is that Michael's Tracer is truly abominable. It's really awful. And as far as the weird thing is, that they
were splitting the Tracer duties recently, though. Baby Bay was on Tracer more, even though he's the more famous like Soldier player, obviously.
And he's way better, like the Soldier and the McCree and stuff like this. Baby Bay is like the star of that DPS duo. But Michael very much plays like this team player kind of DPS, like the support DPS alongside it, but it really does just have a tragic Tracer.
Yes, and let's put some numbers on this one. In Kungarna's last match against FNRG FE, Michael had a +2 kill differential, and Baby Bay had a +27. So we can see there's a pretty stark. Now these are stats, from Winston's lab, and those are killing blows only. So it doesn't really give us exactly the numbers that we need. That the stats that are going to be upcoming from Blizzard, which will be like more useful things like damage per minute. But I think that a 25 finishing blow difference tells us enough. That's such a large difference that it does tell some of the story at least.
Okay.
But Kungana is one of those teams, a bit like FNRGFE, where it's pretty likely as the season of Contenders goes on, they do have talent on the team that's almost certainly going to be at least trialing for Overwatch League teams. I know that some of them are, and some of them are almost definitely going to get picked up as well for some of these teams like Boston, NRG, this kind of thing.
I would say more is the supporting cast, though, because as Thorin was saying, there's not like the big, outside of maybe Baby Bay, you make that argument, there's not really that big star player on this particular roster, although Bishu is actually pretty good.
I can see Bishu getting picked up.
They're not
possibly
necessarily
one of the main tanks.
They're not necessarily in the carry roles, but I do think they have that type of a player in Bishu and potentially Dogman even.
Yeah, I think those guys are good enough to get picked up. I'm just saying they're probably going to be the supporting pieces, maybe like bench players, or they will be the players who are picked because of their synergy with the star players, not because they're the first signings you go out and make.
So the team who Sideshow just referred to, the one that's basically the ex-Fnatic and ex-NRG players and all NA squad, is that a team where it's like just blatantly they just wanted to play in Contenders and they'll always be on different Overwatch League squads? What's the thoughts of them? And obviously they hadn't started very hot.
Now, they looked like they would be at the same level as like a Kungana or an Envision. You know, if they have a good schedule or get some games go their way, they'll be able to get an early lead, contest the playoff spots. Obviously, most people would have had Rogue and Immortals as kind of lock-ins for the top three alongside Envious, so it was more like who's going to get the fourth place, but they were a realistic shot for the fourth place. They just had a bad start to the season that they probably can't recover from at this point.
The word schedule, remember your roots. You know, just because you've been over there a few weeks, mate, don't start saying data and stuff. You know how I keep it real. So, okay, what do you think, Kirby? What do you think of this squad? Obviously, some big names on it.
Yeah. A lot of people that have been in previous pretty good rosters. They, weirdly enough, had found synergy during Season 0. They were playing actually a lot of different styles. The whole Sombra stuff that we saw in Korea during the Apex finals, they were doing some of that, which is like Sombra not just on assault maps, not just on like specific first points or something like that, just throughout the map on defense, for example. They were among the first team in NA that I know of that really started to adopt the Doomfist. So they have a lot of talent and versatility. It's really surprising that they have been able to capitalize off of that on their first matches.
They
did have two close games, and I'm also impressed that we've seen such a change in Buds and Clockwork, who on their previous rosters both were really underwhelming. And on an individual level, I feel like FNRGFE is doing fine right now, and clearly guys like Cool Matt are going to be picked up for Overwatch League rosters in some capacity, but I see them more as like they just don't have the same level of strategy or cohesive play that Kungana has. Like I see Kungana as less of a individual skill roster and more of a synergistic teamwork roster, whereas FNRGFE, we've seen impressive mechanical plays from guys like Clockwork, but their strategies that they've been coming into some of these maps with have been awkward.
See, funnily enough, that Overwatch, what was the one called for E-League? What was the actual title of the league?
Overwatch Open.
That was it, yeah. Funnily enough, that tournament where famously Huck hyped up Buds was almost like the fucking, like after that he was never the same. Like
they just don't seem to have an identity. Like Buds played like 7 different heroes in their last match, and so I feel like they're just sort of panic swapping to a bunch of different things, but they haven't refined any one strategy to actually play around it, so it ends up being sort of scattered.
Is that actually a team, do you think, that properly practices, or do they just play the games and just fuck around and they just like each other or something? Is trying to be like a real team? No,
they properly practice and everything. We scrimmed them when we were in NA. Like they were very serious about that.
I think Monty's kind of hit it on the head though. But instead of it just being like panic swaps, I think they are actually trying to build out like the stuff that they can play too much without actually focusing on having the execution on any one thing. Yeah. Whereas Kungana are very much like they have honed their style. FNRGFE has gone for like, well, we can play all of these things and we'll try and play them all, but they'll actually just get beaten out because we haven't spent all of the time refining it.
That's kind of a byproduct of like where we're at right now in the meta, where a lot of people feel like we're potentially on the verge of like a big meta shift, and so people are like trying to go potentially different directions. And if you're wrong, then right away you just lose a bunch of games, and you might, be screwed for like the.
But they're trying every single composition.
That's their issue.
Just
clearly.
see what fits.
So okay, the Rogue Squad obviously lost 2 in Vision, which was one of the upsets, and their next 2 games they have lined up is against Immortals and against FaZe. So did Rogue show any specific weaknesses? Like, are they still a favorite to potentially just win the Contenders?
Well, Wins played in the first week, and then he left for QuakeCon to play with like Rafa and ID and those guys in the QuakeCon. So they clearly haven't been practicing with their primary Lucio player, because, look, I wouldn't practice for Contenders either if I had a chance to win $1 million at QuakeCon and then go back to Overwatch and, with my team that has historically been very good, and I had a confidence that I could practice and get back into the swing of things. But it is, I think, going to be a little bit rough for them, and they do not look like they have been practicing recently, and also they never had a great deal of versatility in the first place. Like, their versatility was basically, does Nico play Genji or does Nico play Diva? Does Unco play Zen or does Unco play Ana? That's about it, right?
Right. But you're criticizing them for doing that, whereas a lot of other teams did exactly also that, but just were successful as well doing that. So
okay, but they also didn't even, like, sure, we can make the argument that both of the finalists for Apex were in their group when they were there, but even by Korean standards of doing that composition, they were not the best at it, right?
They were pretty good, though. I mean, that argument of it being the finalists in their group is a pretty strong argument, I think. They played well against both of them.
If you look at that
at that time, they looked like the best Western team, and then Envious has gone on to be much better than them, I think, whilst they've also slumped.
If you look at that match versus Kongdu Panthera, they're up on control 1-0. They're up 99-0 on that second point. If Kongdu Panthera doesn't touch that point, they win control 2-0. Then on Numbani, it's like one fight away on the second point that they could have defended. And then all of a sudden that 3-1 for Panthera becomes a 3-0 for Rogue. So you have pretty high volatility.
Okay. All right. Well, you are ignoring the fact that the map selections would have changed with those losses. So
Sure. But like going from like a 3-1 in one direction to like a potentially 3-0, or at least a closer score, and then also having the 2 best teams because they were also the 2 finalists of the
don't get me wrong. I think that Rogue at the time was easily a top 8 team and maybe arguably a top 5 team in the world, right? Okay. But coming into this, obviously, on that meta, we're not seeing the same stuff. And again, there have been issues with them practicing because of the Quake Champions thing, but it's still a question of whether they can adapt, right? And so far the answer has been no. Now, have they tried to adapt? Have they practiced to adapt? I don't know the answer to that. My answer is probably not, given what has been happening with wins. So all we have to see is now, QuakeCon is over, focus can come back, right? They've also been in Canada trying to get their visas for America, playing out of LAN cafes in less than ideal conditions.
I don't disagree.
We need to wait for I do think that the fall of Rogue has been greatly overstated given all of these problems. And so let's just wait and see what happens.
Because coming back from Korea when they were at TakeOver, they were completely burnt out. And they said, no, we're going to take a few weeks of vacation because like right now we just can't play anymore. So when you pair that with then getting ready to go to Shanghai to represent France, and then coming back and then having visa issues, there's like a lot of stuff going on. Now a lot of teams,
because of Quake.
Yeah, a lot of teams have also been in those kind of situations. So I don't think it's like a fair excuse to mention it for them and not for other teams. So clearly they're underperforming and everything. But I don't quite think that this is like the end of times or anything for them, or that they can't turn this around.
I think it might be, though. They're not a future-proof team in any sense. Like what Monty was saying in terms of them being static, it didn't hurt them back then particularly because that was the meta. They built their team around around that. And then Nico had the ability to go over to D.Va, but they're not a very future-proof team. Nox has pulled out the Reinhardt a handful of times, and we have no idea how their cohesion or calling structure will work if they try and run those compositions. Soon pulled out the Doomfist for like one fight or something. But in general, the fact that they've got like 3 DPS players and they kind of throw the D.Va between most of the time Nico, sometimes AKM, their ults have been poor, the teamwork overall, like this is a team that's going to really struggle, I think, to adapt to the next meta.
Well, of course, now the joke is that they're not even the best French team with Gamers Origin.
Yeah,
like EU, right?
Well, that's the other point as well. That also makes them not very future-proof. If they really want this approach where they have 5 French players, then they're going to have to get like Gamers Origins as the other players in whatever Overwatch.
I mean, you're used to the French shuffles in CS:GO, right? There's like 3 teams of French players at any time, and when they start all getting mad at each other, they just reshuffle amongst themselves continually. So all we need is one more French roster, and we can do that. It'll be fun.
But the difficulty there is you have to convince whoever buys you for Overwatch League to also make all the subs French as well, and be like, wait, why can't I have a Korean again? You do speak English. I'm speaking to you now in English. Why can't he just speak English?
Okay, to be fair, again, I would have rated when they were in Apex as Rogue as like a top 5 team in the world. So if you can run a top 5 team in the world with an entirely French roster, seems good. Seems okay to me.
Does make you a bit isolated though in future plans.
There is actually a huge
CS:GO.
There's a huge amount of talent in the French scene for Overwatch as well, though. It seems to be one of those regions where they've really there's a huge amount of depth to it. They could pick up. They already have played with Colsty. There's all the guys on Gamers Origin that they could play with. There's free agents like Flippy and Crew and the Ice Block guys. The personality differences aside, which I think does definitely come into it when you're discussing the French scene in that sense, they could make a very decent Overwatch League team, I think, that had this kind of depth and ability. But some of the personalities in Rogue would be reluctant to let the newcomers have kind of equal say, I think.
Okay. A lot of divas, a lot of egos. Okay, right. So another big team, obviously, is FaZe. And even though they still have, like, some core players that have been there a long time, they obviously have that Korean that they got this month. What do you make of FaZe?
Carpe's been fucking sick. Great player.
Good integration.
I mean, he was already really sick on like his previous teams, like Selfless. It just we didn't really get to see that much of it, unfortunately.
Because people like Monte ran a smear campaign which stopped them from getting into Apex. You mean?
that was definitely
because he hates anyone from his country. So,
I only like American teams at Apex that have 0 American players on them. Right? Yeah. Those are the ones I support. Energy, Rogue, let's go.
The only good Americans are the ones with Koreans inside them. But enough about the sort of shenanigans that some of us get up to in our careers. So, okay. Is FaZe actually a good team, though? Like, can they win contenders, you think?
No, I don't think they can win. I don't think anybody other than Envious at the moment can particularly... I don't think you can really say that any of them look like they can beat Envious and end up winning, or would not get upset by other teams and Envious would. But I think in terms of coming second, yeah, they're a good shot to come second at the moment. They look like a really strong team.
Well, with how it's structured right now, the only priority is to make playoffs, and then it's LAN finals. Potentially you could get better by then, and then just win over there.
And the usual shadow burn in Russia problem is still there, right? He's still there, still waiting to actually get back, get to the States.
Is he?
So again, you just make playoffs then.
I'm not sure on that. I did hear like 1 or 2 rumors that maybe he wasn't in Russia anymore right now. So
well, maybe he isn't, but he was at least previously for the last couple weeks.
How is this like something that has to be speculated on? His location on the planet Earth. How can we not just find out if he is in fact in America or not?
No, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass.
Find out in like 2 seconds, but we're too lazy to do
Who the fuck is this guy, the Count de Saint Germain? He's like, where is he? No one knows his whereabouts, but he appears to play the game. Like
he has a computer somewhere on an island. He's just playing from there.
I do know that at least in week 1, and I assume week 2, he was still in Russia.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong though.